The gunshot echoed through the night as Zara Blackwood clutched her infant daughter tighter to her chest, the child mercifully sleeping despite the chaos that had engulfed their lives. Blood trickled down Zara's temple, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she stumbled through the darkness of the Wyoming wilderness. The year 1878 proving as unforgiving as the men who hunted her. Her husband's blood still stained her dress, his final words ringing in her ears. "Head north to the Broken Spoke Ranch. Find Holden Vance. He owes me a debt. He'll protect you both." Rain began to fall, first a gentle patter that quickly became a torrential downpour, soaking through the thin shawl she'd wrapped around her baby girl. Lucy whimpered, stirring against her mother's breast as the cold seeped into their bones. Zara had been traveling for 3 days, hiding during daylight, moving under the cover of darkness, terrified that Calvin Mercer's men would find them. As dawn broke on the 4th day, Zara spotted smoke rising from a chimney in the distance. The small cabin stood alone against the backdrop of towering pines, a corral of horses to one side, cattle grazing in the distance. The Broken Spoke Ranch it had to be. Her legs nearly gave out from exhaustion and relief. Zara approached the weathered cabin door, her hand trembling as she raised it to knock. 3 sharp raps, then silence. Lucy began to cry, the sound piercing the morning stillness. Footsteps approached from within, heavy and deliberate. The door swung open, revealing a tall man with shoulders broad enough to block the entire doorway. His dark hair was tousled from sleep, stubble covering a strong jaw. A gun hung loosely in his right hand, though it wasn't pointed at her. His eyes, the color of a summer storm, widened at the sight of her blood-stained dress and the wailing infant in her arms. "Please," Zara whispered, swaying on her feet. "Are you Holden Vance?" The man nodded once, his expression unreadable as he took in her desperate state. "I am." "My husband, Thomas Blackwood, said you'd help us." Her voice broke. "He's dead. Mercer's men, they're after us. Please, we have nowhere else to go." Something shifted in Holden's eyes, recognition, followed by a flash of grief quickly masked. He holstered his gun and reached out a steady hand, not to take the baby as she'd expected, but to gently guide Zara over the threshold. "Come inside, madam," he said, his voice deep and calm, a stark contrast to the fear that had been her only companion for days. "You're safe now." As Zara stepped into the warmth of the cabin, her legs finally surrendered to exhaustion. Holden caught her before she hit the floor, cradling both her and the baby with surprising gentleness for hands so weathered by ranch work. "I got you," he murmured, the words a promise as he carefully maneuvered them to a chair by the fire. "Both of you." Zara awoke to the sound of a kettle whistling. Disoriented, she bolted upright, panic seizing her chest when she realized Lucy wasn't in her arms. "She's right here," came Holden's voice from across the room. He stood by a small stove, the baby balanced expertly in one arm as he removed the kettle with his free hand. Lucy was quiet, her tiny fingers wrapped around one of Holden's, her eyes wide with curiosity. "You know how to hold a baby," Zara observed, her voice hoarse. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Had a sister with 4 little ones, spent some time with them before." He trailed off, something dark crossing his features. "Your girl's got a good set of lungs, hungry I expect." Zara nodded, extending her arms to take Lucy back. As Holden transferred the baby to her, their fingers brushed, sending an unexpected warmth through Zara's body. She quickly attributed it to the fire's heat and focused on feeding her daughter. "Thomas is dead." Holden asked quietly, turning to pour hot water into a cup. The mention of her husband's name brought fresh tears to Zara's eyes. 3 nights ago. Calvin Mercer came to collect on a debt Tom said he didn't owe. When Tom refused to pay, they shot him. She swallowed hard. "He told me to find you with his last breath." Holden handed her the cup of tea, his face grim. "Tom and I rode together during the war. He saved my life at Gettysburg. Whatever debt he thought I owed him, it was the other way around." He sat across from her, his elbows on his knees. "Mercer's a dangerous man. Controls half the territory with his money and hired guns. If he's after you, there's a reason beyond a simple debt." Tom had evidence of Mercer's dealings with corrupt officials. documents proving he's been bribing judges, stealing land from honest folk. Zara shifted Lucy to her shoulder, patting the baby's back gently. The documents are sewn into Lucy's blanket. Tom said they're worth a fortune, or they're worth dying for. Holden's eyes narrowed. And Mercer knows you have them, Zara nodded. He will tear apart the territory looking for us. Then we need to make sure he doesn't find you. Holden stood, moving to the window to scan the horizon. You can stay here as long as you need. I've got a back room you can use. It's not much, but it's clean. Why would you risk your life for strangers? Zara asked, unable to keep the suspicion from her voice. Life had taught her that kindness usually came with conditions. Holden turned to face her, his expression solemn. You're not strangers. You're Tom's family. That makes you my responsibility now. He hesitated, then added, and I know what it's like to be hunted. No one deserves to live in fear, especially not a child. That night, after Holden had shown Zara to the small room at the back of the cabin and helped her settle Lucy in a makeshift crib fashioned from a wooden crate lined with soft blankets, Zara lay awake listening to the sounds of the unfamiliar house. She could hear Holden moving about, the floorboards creaking under his weight as he checked doors and windows. The routine of a man accustomed to danger. In the morning, Zara emerged to find Holden cooking breakfast, the smell of coffee and frying bacon filling the cabin. He'd already been outside, his coat was damp from the morning dew and fresh milk sat on the table. Thought you might be hungry, he said without turning around. You need your strength. Thank you. Zara checked on Lucy, who still slept peacefully, then joined Holden at the table. I don't want to be a burden. I can work, earn our keep while we're here. Holden placed a plate of food in front of her. You're not a burden, but if you're set on helping, I won't stop you. Ranch always needs extra hands. Over the next few days, they fell into an unexpected rhythm. Zara took over the cooking and mending, skills she'd honed as a shopkeeper's wife in the small town she'd shared with Thomas. Holden showed her how to tend the garden behind the cabin, teaching her which herbs could be used for medicine and which for cooking. When Lucy cried at night, it was often Holden who heard her first, bringing her to Zara before retreating to give them privacy. During the day, Zara sometimes caught him talking softly to the baby while he worked, telling her about the horses or the changing colors of the mountains in the distance. A week into their stay, Holden returned from town with supplies and troubling news. Mercer's men were asking questions at the general store, offering rewards for information about a woman and a baby. He unloaded the provisions, his movements controlled but tense. They don't know you're here, but they're getting closer. Fear, which had receded somewhat during their peaceful days at the ranch, flooded back. We should leave. I won't bring danger to your door. Holden shook his head firmly. Running now would only make you more visible. Besides, I've faced worse than Calvin Mercer. He paused, then added more gently, I promised to protect you both, and I mean to keep that promise. That evening, as they sat by the fire after Lucy had been put to bed, Holden revealed more of himself than he had since Zara's arrival. I wasn't always a rancher, he said, his eyes fixed on the dancing flames. After the war, I worked as a lawman in Kansas, made enemies of men like Mercer. He took a sip from his coffee cup. One night they came for me, killed my wife and son while I was on patrol. Zara's hand flew to her mouth, horror and empathy flooding her. Holden, I'm so sorry, he nodded, acknowledging her sympathy. I hunted them down, every last one. When it was over, there was nothing left for me there, so I came here, bought this land, been living quiet ever since. Until we showed up at your door, Zara said softly. Life has a way of circling back, Holden replied, finally meeting her gaze. Maybe this is why I survived, to be here when you needed someone. The vulnerability in his eyes made Zara's heart ache. She reached across the space between them, laying her hand gently on his arm. Thank you for not turning us away. He covered her hand with his own, the touch lingering longer than necessary. Thank you for reminding me there are still things worth fighting for. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Zara was hanging laundry while Lucy napped when the sound of approaching horses sent her rushing inside. Holden was already at the window, rifle in hand. Stay in the back room, he instructed, his voice low and urgent. No matter what you hear, don't come out until I call for you. Zara gathered Lucy and hurried to the small bedroom, her heart pounding. Through the thin walls, she could hear men's voices, then Holden's deeper tone responding calmly. The conversation seemed civil at first, but then raised voices erupted, followed by the unmistakable sound of a punch landing. Lucy began to cry, startled by the noise. Zara rocked her desperately, trying to quiet her, knowing the sound could give them away. Outside, there was a scuffle, another loud thud, then silence. Terrifying, complete silence. Footsteps approached the bedroom door. Zara pressed herself against the wall, looking frantically for a weapon, finding only a hairbrush on the small table beside the bed. The door swung open. Holden stood there, a cut above his eye bleeding freely, his knuckles raw. "It's all right," he said, his breathing heavy. "They're gone, just some of Mercer's scouts. They didn't know you were here, just checking ranches in the area." Relief made Zara's knees weak. "You're hurt. It's nothing." He touched the cut absently. "But they'll be back with more men. We need to be ready." That night, after Lucy was asleep, Holden taught Zara how to shoot his revolver. Her hands trembled at first, unused to the weight and power of the weapon. "Steady," Holden murmured, standing close behind her, his arms encircling her as he adjusted her grip. "Breathe in, then out slowly as you squeeze the trigger." Zara was acutely aware of his chest against her back, his breath warm on her neck. When she fired, the bullet hit the edge of the target he'd set up, not perfect but better than she'd expected. "Good," he said, his voice carrying a note of approval that sent a flush of pride through her. Again. By the end of the lesson, Zara's arms ached, but she could hit the target consistently. As they walked back to the cabin in the gathering dusk, Holden's hand rested lightly at the small of her back, a gesture that felt both protective and intimate. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" she asked, curious about this man who was becoming less of a mystery with each passing day. "My father taught me when I was barely tall enough to hold a rifle," Holden replied. "He said a man needs to know how to protect what's his." He glanced down at her, something unreadable in his expression. "Never thought I'd be teaching those same lessons to a woman." "Do you mind that I'm not a man?" The question slipped out before Zara could consider its implications. Holden's step faltered slightly, his eyes darkening. "No," he said finally, his voice rougher than before. "I don't mind at all." That night, Zara dreamed not of Thomas or the horror of his death, but of Holden, his hands guiding hers on the gun, his voice low in her ear, the solid warmth of him against her back. She woke with a start, guilt immediately washing over her. Thomas had been dead barely 2 weeks, and here she was, dreaming of another man. She rose quietly, checking on Lucy before stepping into the main room for a glass of water. Holden sat at the table, cleaning his guns by lamplight, apparently unable to sleep as well. He looked up as she entered, concern crossing his features. "Everything all right, just thirsty," she said, avoiding his eyes as she poured water from the pitcher. "Zara." Something in his tone made her turn to face him. "Whatever happens, I won't let Mercer hurt you or Lucy." "I need you to know that." The intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. "I believe you." 2 days later, a telegram arrived from the nearest town, delivered by a young boy Holden sometimes hired to help with the cattle. The message was brief but chilling. "Mercer coming personally, 20 men." "Tomorrow," Holden's face hardened as he read it. "We need to leave. Now." Within an hour, they had packed essentials and saddled 2 horses. Holden had built a special sling for Lucy, allowing Zara to carry her securely while riding. As they prepared to depart, Holden paused, looking back at the cabin that had been his home for 5 years. "We'll head into the mountains," he said, checking his rifle one last time. "I know places where they won't find us. We can wait them out, then decide our next move." "What about your ranch?" Zara asked, guilt gnawing at her. "Your life here?" Holden's expression softened as he looked at her. "It's just land and timber, Zara, not worth the price of your lives." They rode hard through the afternoon and into the evening, following game trails that wound higher into the mountains. Lucy, miraculously, seemed to enjoy the motion of the horse, gazing around with wide eyes at the passing scenery, occasionally breaking into delighted gurgles that made both adults smile despite their situation. As darkness fell, Holden led them to a small cabin hidden among the trees, so well concealed that Zara wouldn't have noticed it if they'd passed by on the trail. "Trapper's cabin," he explained, dismounting and helping Zara down with Lucy. "Used it during winters when I first came to the territory. No one knows about it except me." The cabin was simple, one room with a stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table, and a single bed covered in dusty furs. Holden quickly got a fire going while Zara fed and changed Lucy. "You take the bed with Lucy," Holden said, spreading his bedroll on the floor near the door. "I'll keep watch." "You need rest too," Zara protested, but Holden shook his head. "I'll sleep when we're safe." In the middle of the night, Lucy's crying woke Zara. As she sat up to tend to her daughter, she was surprised to find Holden already there, gently rocking the baby in his strong arms. "She was fussing," he explained softly. "Didn't want to wake you." Zara watched as he paced the small cabin, his deep voice humming a lullaby she didn't recognize. Lucy's eyes were fixed on his face, her tiny hands reaching up to pat his bearded cheek. The tenderness in Holden's expression as he looked down at the baby made Zara's heart twist with an emotion she wasn't ready to name. "You're good with her," Zara said, moving to stand beside them. "She trusts you." "Babies know good people from bad," Holden replied, carefully transferring Lucy back to her mother's arms. As their hands touched in the exchange, their eyes met, and for a moment, neither moved away. "Holden," Zara whispered, uncertain what she wanted to say, only knowing that something was shifting between them, something as inevitable as the changing seasons. The moment broke when a distant sound caught Holden's attention. He moved swiftly to the window, peering out into the darkness. "Riders," he said, his voice tense. "At least 3, maybe more." Fear clutched at Zara's heart. "How did they find us so quickly? Must have picked up our trail." Holden grabbed his rifle, checking it with practiced efficiency. "Take Lucy to the root cellar. There's a trapdoor under the rug by the bed. Stay there until I come for you." "No," Zara said firmly, surprising herself with her conviction. "I won't hide while you face them alone." She laid Lucy carefully on the bed, surrounding her with pillows to keep her from rolling, then retrieved the revolver Holden had taught her to use. "We stand together." Admiration flashed in Holden's eyes. "Together, then. But if things go bad, your priority is Lucy. Promise me you'll run if you have to." Zara nodded, though she silently vowed not to leave him. Whatever fate awaited them, they would face it as one. The riders approached slowly, their torches visible through the trees. Holden positioned himself by the window, Zara at the second window on the other side of the door. The night seemed to hold its breath as the men drew closer. "That's far enough," Holden called out when they were about 20 yards from the cabin. "State your business." "We're looking for a woman and a baby," came the reply. "Seen them, rancher?" "Nobody here but me," Holden answered. "Move on." There was a pause, then the sound of whispered conversation among the riders. Finally, one spoke again. "We know they're with you, Vance. Mercer wants what's his. Hand them over and you might live to see morning." "They're not his." Holden's voice was cold as steel. "And if you want them, you'll have to come through me." The first shot came without warning, shattering the window near Zara's head. She ducked, heart pounding, then steadied herself and fired back as Holden had taught her. Outside, a man cried out in pain. "Good shot," Holden said grimly, firing his rifle with deadly accuracy. Another rider fell. The exchange of gunfire continued for what felt like hours but was likely only minutes. Zara's ears rang with the noise, her hands steady despite her fear. When her revolver clicked empty, Holden tossed her his, never taking his eyes off the threats outside. Suddenly, the firing stopped. In the silence that followed, Zara could hear Lucy crying from the bed, terrified by the noise. "They're pulling back," Holden said, watching the torches retreat into the trees. "Regrouping." Zara hurried to comfort Lucy, her hands shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. "Will they come back?" "Yes." Holden checked their remaining ammunition, his expression grave. "And with more men, we need to move before dawn." They spent the next hour preparing, gathering what supplies they could carry, mapping out a route deeper into the mountains where horses couldn't follow. As they worked side by side, Zara found herself studying Holden's profile in the firelight, the determined set of his jaw, the gentleness in his hands as he packed supplies for Lucy, the quiet strength that had become her anchor in a world turned upside down. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked finally. "It's not just because of Thomas, is it?" Holden paused, turning to face her fully. "It started because of Thomas," he admitted. "But now—" He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Now it's because I couldn't bear it if anything happened to you, either of you." Zara's breath caught in her throat. The sound of a branch breaking outside silenced her. Holden moved lightning fast, dousing the lamp and pulling Zara and Lucy away from the window. "They're back sooner than I expected," he whispered. "We need to leave now." Through the back. The small door at the rear of the cabin opened onto a narrow trail that wound up into the rocks. Holden led the way, Zara following with Lucy securely strapped to her chest. They moved as quietly as possible through the darkness, using the moon's faint light to guide their steps. Behind them, shouts erupted as Mercer's men discovered the empty cabin. Gunshots rang out, bullets splintering trees around them. "Run," Holden urged, pushing Zara ahead of him as he turned to fire back, covering their escape. Zara ran, her breath coming in harsh gasps, Lucy whimpering against her chest. The trail grew steeper, rockier, more treacherous in the dark. A bullet whizzed past her ear, so close she felt its heat. Another struck a rock near her feet, sending fragments flying. Then came a sound that stopped her heart, Holden's grunt of pain, followed by the thud of a body hitting the ground. Holden. She turned back, heedless of the danger, to find him on one knee, clutching his side, blood seeping between his fingers. "Keep going," he gasped, trying to rise. "I'll hold them off." "No," Zara made her decision in an instant, rushing back to his side. "I won't leave you." With strength born of desperation, she helped him to his feet, taking as much of his weight as she could while still protecting Lucy. Together, they staggered forward, each step a victory against pain and exhaustion. Behind them, Mercer's men were gaining ground. Ahead, the trail disappeared into a narrow crevice in the rock face, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. "There," Holden pointed, his voice weak. "Get through, I'll follow." Zara helped him to the opening, then carefully maneuvered herself and Lucy through the tight space. Rocks scraped her arms and back, but she pressed on until she emerged on the other side, a small ledge overlooking a steep drop. Beyond it, the trail continued along the mountain ridge. Holden followed, his larger frame struggling through the narrow gap, his wounded side leaving smears of blood on the stone. As he finally pulled free, the first of Mercer's men reached the crevice on the other side. "We need to block it," Holden said, scanning the ledge. His eyes landed on a boulder perched near the edge. "Help me." Despite his injury, Holden summoned his remaining strength. Together, they pushed against the massive stone, their combined efforts slowly moving it inch by inch toward the crevice. With a final heave, the boulder tumbled into place, effectively sealing the narrow passage. "That won't hold them forever," Holden said, leaning heavily against the rock face, his breathing labored. "They'll find another way around." Zara examined his wound in the growing light of dawn. The bullet had torn through his side, missing vital organs but leaving a nasty gash that bled steadily. "We need to stop the bleeding," she said, tearing strips from her petticoat to create a bandage. As she worked, binding the wound as best she could, Holden watched her face with an intensity that made her cheeks warm despite their dire situation. "You could have kept running," he said softly. "You and Lucy would be safer without me slowing you down." Zara tied off the bandage, then looked up to meet his gaze. "I told you, we stand together." The emotion that crossed Holden's face made her heart skip. Slowly, as if giving her time to pull away, he raised his hand to cup her cheek. His touch was gentle, reverent. "Zara," he whispered, her name a prayer on his lips. The moment was broken by Lucy's hungry cry. Reality crashed back. They were still hunted, still in danger, with miles of wilderness ahead. "We need to keep moving," Zara said reluctantly, stepping back to adjust Lucy in her sling. Holden nodded, pushing himself away from the rock with a grimace. "There's a place about 2 miles from here. Old mining camp, might find supplies, maybe even help. They traveled slowly, Holden's injury forcing frequent stops. The sun climbed higher, bringing with it heat that sapped their already diminishing strength. Lucy grew fussy, uncomfortable in the makeshift sling, her cries occasionally echoing across the rocky terrain. By midday, they reached the abandoned mining camp, a collection of weathered shacks clustered in a small valley. To their surprise and relief, one cabin showed signs of recent habitation. Smoke curled from the chimney, and a mule stood tethered outside. They approached cautiously. Holden, despite his wound, insisted on going first, his hand resting on his gun. The door opened before they reached it, revealing an elderly man with a long, white beard and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He took in their bedraggled appearance, Holden's blood-stained shirt, the baby in Zara's arms. "Looks like trouble's found you," he observed, his voice raspy with age. "Mercer's boys, I reckon," Holden tensed. "You know Mercer?" The old man spat to one side. "Known him since he was a pup, watched him grow into the snake he is now." He stepped aside, gesturing them in. "Name's Josiah. Any enemy of Mercer's is a friend of mine." Inside the cabin, Josiah proved to be more than just a hermit hiding in the mountains. He had been a doctor during the war, his skills still evident as he treated Holden's wound with practiced efficiency. "Lucky," he pronounced, finishing the stitches. "Missed anything important? You'll live, so long as infection doesn't set in." While Holden rested, Josiah helped Zara prepare food and showed her how to make a salve for Lucy's skin, chafed from the long journey. The old man's kindness was unexpected but welcome, a reminder that goodness could be found even in the harshest wilderness. "How long you folks planning to run?" Josiah asked that evening as they sat around his fire. "Mercer's not known for giving up easy." Zara glanced at Holden, who had been unusually quiet since his treatment. "We have documents," she explained. "Proof of Mercer's crimes, if we could get them to the federal marshal in Denver." "Denver's a long way," Josiah mused, "but I might know a shorter path to justice." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Territorial judge is holding court in Silverton, not 3 days' ride from here. Friend of mine, honest as they come. Those documents of yours would interest him mighty." Hope flickered in Zara's chest for the first time in weeks. "Could you get us there?" Josiah nodded slowly. "Got an old wagon out back, not pretty, but it'll get you to Silverton." He glanced at Holden. "Your man needs rest before he falls off another horse anyway. Your man." The phrase sent an unexpected warmth through Zara. She didn't correct the assumption. That night, with Lucy finally asleep in a cradle Josiah had fashioned from a wooden box, Zara found Holden outside, standing under the vast canopy of stars despite his injury. "You should be resting," she chided gently, coming to stand beside him. "Couldn't sleep." He turned to face her, his expression troubled. "Been thinking about what happens after." After Silverton, after Mercer." He took a deep breath, wincing slightly at the pull on his stitches. "You'll be free to go wherever you want, start a new life with Lucy." Understanding dawned on Zara. "You think I'll leave?" Holden looked away, his profile sharp against the night sky. "You never chose this life, Zara. You came to me out of necessity, not choice." Zara stepped closer, her heart pounding. "And if I choose it now, if I choose you?" His eyes snapped back to hers, hope and disbelief warring in their depths. "You have a chance at any life you want." "I want a life with someone who would risk everything to protect my daughter," Zara said softly. "Someone who teaches me to be strong instead of just sheltering me. Someone who looks at Lucy like she's the most precious thing in the world." She reached up, her fingers gently tracing the line of his jaw. "I want you, Holden." For a moment, he remained perfectly still, as if afraid any movement would shatter the moment. Then, with aching tenderness, he lowered his head and kissed her. The kiss was gentle at first, a question, a promise. Then, as Zara's arms wound around his neck, it deepened into something more urgent, years of loneliness and fear dissolving in the heat between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Holden pressed his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the moment you stood your ground with that revolver," he admitted, a smile in his voice. "I've wanted you to since you rocked my daughter to sleep," Zara replied, her own smile blooming. 3 days later, they arrived in Silverton, the documents safely delivered to Judge William Morrison. The evidence was damning, detailed records of bribes, threats, and even orders for murder, including that of Thomas Blackwood. Within hours, telegrams were dispatched to territorial authorities, and by nightfall, warrants were issued for Calvin Mercer and his associates. Zara and Holden, along with Lucy, were given rooms above the town's best hotel, with deputies posted outside their door for protection. The danger wasn't over, but for the first time, the future held more promise than peril. As they stood by the window of their room, watching the bustling town below, Holden slipped his arm around Zara's waist. "Judge Morrison offered me a position," he said. "Deputy Marshal for the Northern Territory." Zara turned in his embrace. "Will you take it?" "Depends." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering. "I was thinking we might settle somewhere permanent, a town with a school for Lucy when she's older. Maybe add a few more children to our family." He paused, suddenly uncertain, "If that's something you might want." Zara's heart swelled with love for this man who had become her protector, her partner, her future. "I want that more than anything," she whispered, "as long as we're together." Holden's smile was like the breaking of dawn after the longest night. "Together," he agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss. 2 years later, the town of New Hope celebrated the birth of twins to Marshal Holden Vance and his wife Zara. Their big sister Lucy, now a chattering 3-year-old, proudly announced to anyone who would listen that her papa had caught her mama and the babies when they arrived, with the steadiest hands in the whole wide West. Standing on the porch of their home at the edge of town, Holden wrapped his arms around his growing family, marveling at how a desperate knock on his door had led to a life fuller and richer than he had ever dared to dream. Zara leaned back against his chest, their children secure in their embrace, fear a distant memory replaced by love and the promise of all the years to come.